The Souls series is known for being able to craft some of the most immersive and hauntingly beautiful worlds in all of gaming. FromSoft have been beyond brilliant at creating the most captivating areas that we could imagine. With a ludicrous amount of locales over the 7 games, you have just about as much design, action and variety that one could ask for. We've gone over the best, worst and hardest bosses in each game, but in today's video I'll be going through the series and highlighting which area from each game that I believe to be the best, starting things off with Demon Souls. For their first iteration in the series, there's a selection of great levels to choose from, but for this video I'll be going with 3-1, the Prison of Hope. Man, what an area. I'll give an honourable mention to both 1-1 and 1-3, which are also fantastic levels in their own right. They're both iconic and do some heavy lifting in securing Boletaria as my favourite world in the game. I love the medieval vibes they give off, and I think the overall design of them both were done spectacularly. But going back to 3-1, it's a level that grips you in from the moment you spawn off the Archstone. The heavy footsteps, the distant wails of prisoners and the screams of other NPCs. It's like living to a pure nightmare. In my opinion, it's one of the most psychologically impactful levels in the series. I did a video about it a while ago, but it really plays into the horror aspects that these games have to bring. The design of the level plays a part in that too, as it's almost like a vertical maze. It's a very claustrophobic ordeal, forcing players to be cautious at the littlest of things like opening a cell up or turning a corner. You never know what could be lurking. Speaking of what could be lurking, the Mind Flayers. Oh boy, they're an especially tricky and frustrating enemy to combat against. With their devastating ability to paralyze you, they're probably the most terrifying enemy to see in the game, which would make sense in a level like this. Going through the floors of this area, trying to figure out what the hell you're doing the first time round is absolutely petrifying and has you fully wishing that you were gone from here. And once you do see the dim light of the outside world, you feel a sense of freedom only gained from escaping the horrifying atmosphere inside. FromSoft are masters at creating levels, but even so early on, they were able to immerse players into their worlds on an unparalleled scale. It's a level where you feel like running from as quickly as possible, but that would prove to be detrimental as it's one where you need to check every nook and cranny for missable secrets, lest you want to be facing the boss for an infinite amount of times. Transitioning over to Dark Souls 1, I think there's a clear-cut favourite in this game, and although I'd like to be different for once and go with something else, I just can't deny the brilliance that FromSoft accounted for when creating the legendary Anor Londo. I can give some shout out to the Painted World and Ulasil Township though, because those are some absolutely brilliant levels. Although still not close to Anor Londo for me, they both did well in engrossing me in their particular themes. The Painted World was just insane to discover for the first time. It genuinely had me thinking, what the hell was this supposed to happen? And I just love the Ulasil Township's thickly dark descent through the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. But Anor Londo holds a special place in my heart, and I'm sure it does in a lot of your hearts too. After crawling through the sewer-filled depths, escaping through the monstrous nightmare that is Blighttown, and finally freeing yourself from the clutches of the trap-ridden Sen's Fortress, your mental state is in the bin. You kill the Iron Golem and are thinking, come on, what's next? What fucked up area have they got waiting for me this time? However, as you're taken by those demons, your intrigue rises only to have bestowed upon you a breathtaking sight. The city of the gods, bathed in an eternal sunset, feels like a divine reward for all the suffering that led you there. It's one of the more iconic visuals that the series had to offer, and the feelings from its visuals are matched by its design and gameplay. Treading the grounds of Anor Londo feels like storming the higher heavens. Each room emanates a prestigious aura. There's this extremely espionage type vibe I get when I'm breaking through windows, running across rafters and fighting through a dozen painted guardians. I love the enemies by the way, from the giant sentinels to the pristine silver knights. They're used so well and make the level just seem that much more important to the overall game. I say this, but I'm sure we all despise this encounter with the Silver Knight archers. Ornstein and Smo being placed here just up that iconic factor a lot more. Also, the way it elicits so much emotion from us when we see it again in Dark Souls 3, I think that says enough about the level. As we move on to Dark Souls 2, I'll happily admit that I'm spoiled for choice here because some of these areas are absolutely amazing. Specifically in the DLC, where they created some of their best areas alongside some of their worst, but that's for next week. Each with some unique presentation, interesting gimmicks and awesome as fuck exploration sequences. They all shine in ways that the base game could only come close to. However, the area I chose as my favourite in the game went to Broom Tower from the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC. I do love pretty much every aspect about this place, from the initial walk over the chain to the tower story itself. There's a lot to unpack with this area. Your objective being to dismantle all the ashen idols around the level. It's a very exciting goal to take part in, and having your progress tie in with how the end boss will function was pretty neat. Although if you do mismanage your smelter wedges, it can get annoying deal with the Fume Knight being healed. That's probably my only negative about the area, as even the enemies I love, a rarity in Dark Souls 2. I think each of the foes here have fun movesets to combat against. In particular, these large iron warriors can be pretty sick to go up against, keeping in mind the need to maneuver around the lava it spews out. I also just love the design in general, the verticality, riding up the ever-working elevators to find and explore new floors that lead you to their own encounters. I'll just never get tired of the skill that some of these levels have to offer. Even exploring the outer portions of this area, walking across the ash-covered land and unveiling hidden secrets as you do so, is also engaging and just gives the area so much more character in the grand scheme of things. The main three levels, this, Shulver and Ilium Lois, did well in terms of making their exploration unique, memorable and engaging, and the trio puts a nice bow tie on the experimental nature that came along Dark Souls 2. Which is also kind of funny given how these DLC gave us some of the worst areas in the series, but you know, we give and take with this game. Speaking about the worst areas in the series, let's move on to Bloodborne. Wait, what? That made no sense. Anyways, in Bloodborne I feel like the areas are overall extremely solid. There's not a single one that I dislike. Maybe a few meh or disappointing ones, but in general it's got a pretty great set of levels. I could go with the snow-filled gothic landscape that is Canehurst for its refreshing departure from the game's usual madness, or really any of the three excellent DLC areas that I adore for a multitude of reasons. But for today I'll be ignoring all those and be leaning towards the introductory level, the one that drew many into the horrific streets of Bloodborne, Central Yharnam. Right from the get-go, the game envelops you in a thick and dense world, filled to the brim with incredible gothic architecture, the maddening howls of enemies and the mobs of crazed townfolk. The layout of the level is phenomenal, with loads of sub-areas to explore, paths that intertwine with one another and shortcuts that connect the lot all to a single lantern. It's an amazing tutorial, introducing you to the fast-paced combat by deliberately placing every enemy to teach you one thing or another. Hordes that'll familiarise you with the rally system, brick trolls that'll initiate the art of parrying, giant terrifying werewolves that'll teach you that sometimes it's okay to cheese enemies in a doorway. No, but seriously, this specific pair of enemies is scary as hell, and you ain't gonna catch me fighting them normally, let's just say that. Its challenge is also fairly balanced, as you're left unable to level up through the entire area, unless you've explored and used a madman's knowledge to gain some insight. You have to manage your healing resources that you gain throughout the area, which is balanced by the fact that Yharnamites constantly drop blood vials upon death. It was a ballsy decision to leave a majority of players unable to level up though, as the only other time it's ever done in an introductory area would have to be 1-1 in Demon Souls, which is another one of my favourite tutorial levels. However, the encounters aren't ever too overwhelming. I'd say for a general rule, if you can get past this group of enemies, then you're pretty good for the rest of the area until the boss. Speaking of which, another great part of Central Yharnam is the two opening yet opposing major boss fights that it offers you, those being the Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne. They really are great at getting you used to the two prolific types of bosses that you'll be seeing throughout the game. With the Cleric Beast, you'll get used to the formula of sticking to beast bosses, staggering limbs and applying constant pressure, whereas with Gascoigne, you're made to play a little more strategically, go for gun parries and adapt to a feral phase transition. It's an all-timer level, it's Bloodborne at its purest, and it sets the tone for just about everything that follows in this game. Moving on to Dark Souls 3, another game with a consistent level of quality when it comes to its areas, though I struggled a lot more picking out a definitive favourite in this case. I'm torn between Lothric Castle and Irithyll of the Boreal Valley, with some honourable mentions going to the Ring City and Archdragon Peak. Lothric Castle is an excellent area with an atmosphere that feels akin to Seas in a Kingdom. The setting is awesome and you feel like a one-man army as the enemies come at you with underhanded methods to try and take you out. All these foes and the obstacles are intense and really highlight the shift in stage from the mid-game to the beginning of the end game. However, with all that being said, my favourite area in the game is going to go to Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. From the moment you step out of the dark and dreary catacombs of Carthus to see the majestic moonlit view, you know you're about to enter something special. If I had to describe Irithyll in a single word, it would be enchanting. You are quite literally put in a trance by the incredible opening shot of the level. So much so that you may just walk on and get surprised by the terrifying Sullivan beast that ambushes you as the introductory enemy. A true tone setter to get you adjusted to the increase in difficulty that the level brings. The Pontiff Knights are deceptively elegant, and these fire witches can cause a lot of trouble, hitting like trucks and being accompanied with lesser foes, making their encounters ones to be taken slowly yet seriously. It feels like a city of ghosts. The near empty streets and the chilling wind create this sense of isolation. The sewer sections are gross and unnerving, but do great in building up the twisted tyrant that is Pontiff Sullivan. That section after defeating the boss is also worth mentioning, a very popular PvP location. Even I dabbled in the commotion sometimes whilst trying to gather some Covenant rewards. It didn't go well, I'm trash at PvP. There's even the ceremony with Anri if you're completing her questline, but one of the most memorable sections would have to be the lead up to the area that comes beforehand. The attempt at recreating the Anne Orlando Archer sequence, which thank god wasn't as frustrating, but the slow realization afterwards that you're coming up to the same elevator from Dark Souls 1 is just amazing. Just in general, the placement of this area, after an aesthetically depressing couple of levels, may carry it a bit in my opinion, but damn if it doesn't feel like something special. Now with Sekiro, I think almost every damn area in the game is pretty good. Senpo Temple and Ashina Castle are some of the most impressively designed levels that the game has to offer in terms of their layout, whilst also being a joy to explore and fight in. However, Fountainhead Palace trumps all that this game has on store as an absolutely heavenly experience. A realm where only a few can ascend, this area really is the pinnacle of Ashina's mythology. Everything about this area speaks to me on a spiritual level. Firstly, the aesthetic is unbelievably godly. The mix of your blues, reds and pinks managed to plaster a sense of majesty over every inch of this place. From the serene cherry blossom trees to the angelic scarlet structures that rest alongside the deep cerulean sea. It all culminates to make perhaps the most visually pleasing area to admire in the entire series. The gameplay is also at its peak here. The Okami warriors are some of the most fun enemies in the game to fight. It's less of an intense duel and more of a fun spar as they bounce about, laughing and having a good time, as you yourself are equally having an exquisite time combating against them. Even the sections containing those palace nobles were great, forcing players to go through with stealth, adhering to one of the game's main shinobi principles. The sub area where you dive underwater is the best that the game has to offer in that regard. It feels really fun and freeing hunting after the carps, and you can even complete one last questline concerning the great coloured carp and its attendant. Although this one double headless encounter can go straight to hell, I'll be honest. The other mini bosses are pretty neat in their own regard. The Sakura Bullet is one of the rare reskins that I don't mind because of how beautiful it looks, even if fighting it is a completely different story. The Shichiman Warrior are always a fight that I enjoy, and the Okami Leader mini boss is one of the more respectable level hazards in the series that prevents you from rushing a large portion of this zone. If I was to describe Irithel as enchanting, then the most appropriate word to describe Fountainhead Palace would be divine, cause that's what it truly feels like. From the questionable introductory cutscene to the entire concluding set piece that leads you to the Divine Dragon, it's all divine. And now we arrive at Elden Ring, the newest and latest model in the series. I'm only considering the legacy dungeons when talking about the areas, as those are much more comparable to the regular levels of the games that came before it. So when I say area in this part, I'm just referring to the legacy dungeons. FromSoft put an insane amount of care and craftsmanship in the areas in this game. I love the bosses as much as the next guy, but for me, exploring whatever intricately designed level they have to offer is what makes Elden Ring so special for me, and subsequently one of my favourite games of all time. Whether it's the oppressive storm-ravaged halls of Stormveil Castle, the eerie magical corridors of Raya Lucaria, or the majestic yet decaying splendour of crumbling Farum Azula, every location is unique, rewarding and unforgettable. However, amidst all that, Leyndell, the royal capital, does splendidly to stand above the rest. I've just realised that aside from Demon Souls, all my picks today have featured areas that contain an amazing artistic shot at the beginning that blows the minds of the audience, and Leyndell is no different in that regard. Utterly stunning players right off the start, the area wastes no time in showcasing the scale that we're in for. It's similar to the Ring City, where we're given an extremely delightful view that has players especially excited to explore what's waiting for them. However, in that area, you're not really able to go inside places and see much of the city for yourself, but with Leyndell, they give you the full package. You can go everywhere your eyes can track, from the individual buildings to back alleys to hidden sewers to grand avenues to the roofs of structures to even being able to scale the humongous dragon corpse near the city walls. And it's not just that, but the way you're able to get to these places. The traversal through the level is so engaging. Being able to scale through the rooftops of buildings if you're intuitive enough can provide a brief route to the first of the two major bosses here, whilst exploring through the alleyways can offer you so many secret paths and interesting encounters. The pool of enemies is mostly stuff we've seen before, but it doesn't take much away from the level for me. It's just so incredible from top to bottom, and undoubtedly for me the best level in Elden Ring. It's just so damn good. With all things said and done, that brings us to the end of the video. It was a pleasure to speak about some of FromSoftware's greatest levels, and if you've made it to the end of the video, then thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know your favourites from each game. I'll be on the lookout for them. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to check some of my other ones out, and perhaps even drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for all the recent support. It's extremely motivating to see you guys watching the content. Next video I'll be talking about the worst areas in each game, so be on the prowl for that. Have a great day everybody, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!